Megan, a rock star in the limelight with a flourishing music career, a talented spouse, and a lovely daughter, conceals a dark secret as he spirals into a haze with the power goddess. Nigel experiences extreme highs and lows, revealing an inner beast. As he descends further into the clutches of the goddess, Nigel plunges to rock bottom, consumed by a delusional world where debauchery rules. Struggling for survival, he faces a difficult choice between his affection for the power goddess and his musical mistress, and the life he once cherished. My Days with the Dark Muse, a Better to Burn Out novel, is available at most online booksellers. Welcome to the Better 2 podcast. I'm your host, Donna. Today's guest is Russian-born Yaroslav Barsukov. He has a new book that is out now called Sleeping Worlds Have No Memory. We talk about his book as well as his transition from Russia to Austria and his writing journey as well as being a physicist. And we do talk about the multiverse and the Mandella Effect. So tune in. Hi, Yar. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Donna. I'm doing really great. Happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here too because things get delayed on my end, and I apologize about that.
Totally fine.
We talked briefly off camera, and you're in lovely Austria.
Yeah, it's a beautiful country, isn't it? I've spent the first half of my life, 21 years in Russia, and then I immigrated and spent the other almost 20 years of my life, 19 years of my life in Austria. It's a beautiful country. The landscape is just wonderful, and the Austrian Alps are great. So and there are lost villages somewhere in the hillside, very beautiful.
Was this something? I know you went to school in Austria. You were originally living in Russia, and you were originally following your pursuit of studying physics. Did the immigration happen because you went to Austria for school and you're like, hey, you know what? I like it here.
No, it was a bit the other way around. So I studied in Russia. So I went to school in Russia, and then I spent 4 years at the university in Russia, and then I transferred to the Technical University of Vienna. And continued studying there. But I mean, I can't pinpoint a real reason why I immigrated. It's just, I wanted to get away from the kind of thing that Russia was becoming at the time, because it was very clear. I emigrated in 2005, and by 2004, it was pretty clear where the country was headed. But why Austria and not some other country, I really can't tell. I mean, I visited the country a couple of times in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I love the country. I love the people. People are very, most of them have a big heart. Let's put it this way, And they're also, in many respects, they're similar to Russians, Okay. So there is a lot of bureaucracy in Austria, comparable to the amount of bureaucracy in Russia, and there is a certain fatalism also. Okay. Austrians possess a certain kind of fatalism that the Russians also possess. So I guess I sense kind of kindred spirits in Austrians, and then just immigrated when.
So a little bit lighter than when you were in Russia, and sometimes so not a huge culture shock either. Then.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a huge culture shock. No. So the language is completely different, though, and Austrians do love their particular local variety of German language. So they all can talk English, but much like French, they would, prefer to talk German to you.
Understand.
So I spent like a year just learning the language, soaking it all up, and then I went to work at the UN, where you only have to speak English.
So that forced you to learn. So you're multilingual because you learned English, of course. You can speak Russian, I'm sure, and I'm sure you speak Austrian as well as German.
Yeah, basically, Austrian variety of German is German, right? Mm-hmm. But for example, the German they speak in Switzerland is much more different. So when I see I watch local Swiss news or something, I can't understand a word of what they're saying. And there is also a region of Austria that borders on Switzerland. It's called Vorarlberg. Same thing. I can't understand a word of what people there are saying. But Austrian German is very close to German. But there are little local words, local inflections, intonations, and so on.
I totally get. Okay, so I'm originally from New Orleans, and
Cool.
and in New Orleans we have if you go further south, there's Cajun French, and you have to. I don't know Cajun. I know a couple of words, but I could not save my life if I had to. But New Orleans is kind of an entity into itself because my my junior year in high school, we moved up to Shreveport, which is northern Louisiana,
Mm.
and we had words that we used in New Orleans, such as neutral ground. And a neutral ground, nobody would, they looked at you when you would say this. They're like, what are you talking about? It's actually a median, but in New Orleans, we called it a neutral ground. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, so it was like, so I get where you're at. Trust me, because, and my grandfather worked on the railroad. So a grip was a suitcase, but he would call it a grip. And so
Okay.
there was, so my friends were just like, what are you talking about? So I understand. I get it. And I mean, like you, I came up here because I live outside of Chicago. I
Mhm.
came up here in '93 and I went back to New Orleans for a bit to go to college. And then I had, yeah, okay. I had this reader tell me, an intuitive reader on the radio tell me that I was going to move back up here. And I remember looking at my grandmother. This was like March of '95. And I said, there's no way in hell I'll go back there.
Mhm.
I've been here for 27 years. So, I mean, sometimes you just don't know why you end up moving away from everything you once knew as home.
Exactly. Yeah. That
So,
is. I know the feeling. I know
yeah,
the feeling. But although I can, I don't think that I'll be returning to Russia anytime soon.
I don't
But
blame you. Nothing against Russia, but I don't blame you. I can
yeah.
understand. I can understand. So, why did you decide that you wanted to be a physicist?
Um.
Or
It
was that
was.
kind of anger pushed? I mean, because okay, I'm going to be honest with you. Growing up in because I'm a Gen Xer, we were
Mm.
taught that when you're living in Russia, okay, so this is back in the '70s. You know, the kids don't get to make their choices about what they want to do. They are just thrown into it, and that's it. And
Mm.
I don't know if that's true or not, but here you go. So this is what my interpretation was, that you really didn't have that choice. That you were told you had good academics, good hindsight about this, and you're going to do this.
Well, um, it's what it's partially true that kids have limited choices, and the reason for that is military service in Russia is really like you don't want to go there. Like there is I think the roots of the current situation are somewhere in Khrushchev's era because he at some point he allowed I think prisoners to kind of to cut their time by serving in the army or something. So basically the things that happen there are not really good. You don't want to go there. And the way you can postpone military service or the way you can evade military service altogether is basically by studying physics or mathematics or any kind of technical branch of study. So if you want to study literature, if you want to study law or something, then at some point you'll have to make a pause,
Mm-hmm.
do the military service, and then come back. So I didn't want to. I had poor eyesight always. I didn't want to serve. So my choices were limited in this respect. And the university in which I studied, it was easily accessible. So this is another problem with Moscow. I remember when I started studying, it took me maybe 40 minutes, half an hour to get to the university. Then second semester it was 1 hour. Third semester it was 1 hour and a half. Then 2 hours. Then
Yeah.
and so on. So traffic jams were a big problem. I mean, they've solved this problem more or less by now, but back then traffic jams and traffic as a whole was a huge problem in Moscow.
Oh,
So somehow your choices are limited, but I always loved physics because my father also studied physics, and it kind of influenced me a lot.
okay. Okay, and I mean, I get the traffic thing because, yeah, when I worked in the city and I lived in the suburbs. If we had a snowstorm, the worst trip I ever made was 3.5 hours. So I
Oh
get
my
it.
God.
Yeah, it's normally about maybe an hour and 20. So I get it. I get it. So what made you decide at this point then? So you've got your degree and everything. Did you fall into writing, or was this something that was always a latent passion as a kid? You were always thinking these stories, and how did it all come about?
It was always latent passion. Thing was, I think when I was 4, I'm not sure, maybe 3, 4, 5, I don't know. I could write already, but not very fast. So I asked my grandmother, who was a teacher of literature and Russian language. I asked her to type the stories which I had in my head for me on the typewriter, because nobody allowed me to use the typewriter.
Yeah.
Like, don't go near this. But I could dictate, and my grandmother then typed it in for me. And it was also funny because back in the 80s, it was, certain books were difficult to get in Russia. There were things about scarcity, which artificial scarcity, which are quite amazing. But books, was one of the things which, you couldn't get everything that you wanted. So libraries played a huge role, and we borrowed a lot of books from the library. And I remember that the books which we took from the library, they were kind of wrapped in some kind of paper. Like, I remember it being like some kind of bacon paper, like yellow. And I wanted the same paper on the books which my grandmother typed in for me. So can you please, like, bind them and then put them, wrap them in this library, style paper. So when my handwriting became fast enough, I started writing myself. And I continued writing, through school, through university. But interestingly enough, I never considered a career. I never considered, showing it to anyone, or, I mean, I showed it to my friends, but showing it to an editor or something. Never considered that. So I was just, writing for the joy of it. I would love to get back to that feeling,
Yeah, yeah.
But I was just like, okay, cool. I have a story in my mind. I can write it. And then I kind of tried a number of hobbies. So I was a hobbyist game developer, and that went well, and then it didn't go well. Then I played classical guitar, for quite a while, until my right hand ceased to function properly. And then, in I think 2014, at the end of 2014, I thought, my God, I mean, I probably should, like, writing has always been my passion. I probably should be doing that, And I decided to start writing, and I decided to start writing in English, because I thought, okay, what the heck? The market in German and the market in Russian is very, tiny. So I should start writing in English. And I can say this. I've been always very blessed, So I can't complain at all. So my second story sold. My first big thing, novella sold. My first novel sold. So I've been given a lot of gifts, on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always like in the back of my mind, a little kind of a latent passion. Yeah.
Do you still have those stories from when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, I still have them.
Have
They're
you ever?
atrocious.
I know. Well, I was going to say, did you ever look back at them and go, "Oh my gosh, I actually wrote this"?
Atrocious is perhaps a bit of a strong word. They're flawed, deeply flawed, but I catch a glimpse, here and there I catch a glimpse of myself, like the way I'm now in the person that was writing this. So it's a kind of a fascinating look back, and it's I was talking to someone recently, and they told me about a person who a person with dementia, basically, and a writer, and that writer said that reading their own older things is the only way for them to understand how they felt back then. It's kind of like almost an external memory.
Well, that's
So.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yep. So it's fascinating.
Oh, it is. It is, and I think the characters at a certain level. If it's truly one of your passions, the characters at a certain level in the story is part of you. It's part of your DNA.
Very true.
And so
Very true.
you have, I mean, I can see why it would be something to reconnect with if you had Alzheimer's or dementia, because it's going to pull you back to
Yeah,
those moments, joy,
true.
sadness, or whatever. But so you decide you're going to take up the gauntlet, and you're going to go ahead and become this writer. So who did you show your first story to that you decided, okay, this is it, I'm going to do it now?
Well, I showed my first story to a couple of friends, and then I was hanging out at a place called I think it was called Absolute Right Water Cooler, which is quite a well-known forum on the internet, and so I knew the process. I knew how to submit. I knew that which magazines were out there, and just submitted the first story to Clarkesworld. Clarkesworld is like the in terms of literary fiction, short fiction, it's the best magazine. It's like gates of heaven. So of course they rejected it. And after maybe 10 or 12 rejections, I realized, okay, I need to hang out with people who are much more successful than me. Otherwise, I will never succeed. And some people were saying, okay, you need to join, a writer's circle, in your local town. And I immediately, Googled, found a writer's circle, writers writing in English who live in Austria, in Vienna. And then I thought, okay, how many Austrian writers writing science fiction or fantasy in English do I know? And I started counting, and I couldn't remember anyone. So I thought, okay, maybe that's not the right, not the right place. And I started looking for, different forums where professionals would be hanging out. And of course, all of them were closed, but there was one called Bain's Bar, which was open to everybody, and where a lot of successful writers hung out. It's recently there were some scandals, connected with Bain's Bar, and they closed. But back then it was like a treasury of knowledge. So I joined them, and I was eager to learn, and I learned so many things, which, it's in many respects a numbers game. So you have what I was told. Okay, you have basically 200 to 250 words to hook the reader. And in those 200 words, you need to introduce the speculative element. You need to introduce your characters, what they want, what the stakes are, and so on. So really kind of, things that you don't think about or you don't talk about if you hang out in other places. And Bain's Bar helped me really a lot. So this is why Bain's Bar is the reason why I sold my second story. And why, 5 months into writing, I sold a story to Nature. This is all thanks to Bain's Bar. And then, once I sold the story to Nature, which is a professional magazine, I joined Codex Writers, which is, a community of even higher tier. A lot of great people were hanging out there. Like Ken Leo was hanging out there. I think then Tchaikovsky was also hanging there. I don't know, don't recall. And then I submitted a story to Metaphorosis, which is a wonderful, wonderful magazine, unfortunately closed now. But the editor of Metaphorosis, he worked very, very closely with authors. He almost never accepted a story in its original form, but rather every story went through 2, 3, or 4 revisions, which is a lot for short stories, a lot. And I connected with him really. So I thought, his method and his, his view of literary fiction very much in tune with mine. And afterwards, I used him a lot as a first reader to get his feedback. And it was with him that I published the novella Tower of Monestro, for which I was nominated for the Nebula, and which served as the basis for the upcoming novel.
So what did it feel like when you got nominated?
I cried. I mean, because when they call you, basically, right? They call you to find out, if you're if there are any co-authors and so on. And when I saw an American number on my phone, I thought, okay, probably this is Seth calling. So I pick up the phone. It's Vice President, and we just talked for a bit. Then I hang up, and I just cried. I just cried. It was so amazing. It was such an amazing feeling, you know. I wish I could relive that.
I get it. I mean, nothing as drastic as that. The first time I published two short stories in an anthology, and I won an award in the writing group, the Viscous Seduction Award. And I remember finding out I won, and I was just like, it was like a kid in a candy store. I was thrilled. I couldn't believe it. And
Yeah.
it's not anywhere near as prestigious as what you won, but it's still that feeling of you're being recognized, especially when you're a newer writer. And you have that moment. It's kind of like, wow, okay,
Well, I didn't win. I was only nominated.
but still,
But still.
it's being nominated. I mean, think about it this way: how many other people tried to be part of this, and you were nominated? I mean, that's still, as they say at the Oscars, it's a gift just to be nominated.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's always good to reframe things sometimes, and seriously though, how many other people tried to do what you did? So take that nomination, even though you didn't win, you still got nominated.
That is true. That is true. Thank you.
You're welcome. So you have the book coming out, and it'll actually most likely by the time this airs will be out. Tell us a little bit about it. There we go. Look at you already have it in your hands. Okay, so
yeah. That's an advanced review copy, but I think it will look much the same in its final version.
So what inspired the book?
That is a very funny story, actually, or not funny, quite depressive story in a way, because I thought originally that nothing inspired it. I thought it was just a story that occurred to me, and I just wrote it down, outlined it in 2 days, and then wrote it. But the thing is, the story is it takes place on a border between two countries. And one country is like the main country. The other country is called Duma, and it's based on Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russian Empire. So like two societies which I know a lot about.
Right.
And the thing is, on the side of the country where the action takes place, they're building huge, massive anti-airship tower, like the biggest construction ever undertaken by humanity. And they're building it because they're basically afraid of an invasion. And the question that runs like a scarlet thread through the novella and through the first part of the novel, because like the novella is contained in the novel. Just to make it clear, you don't need to read the novella to read the novel. The novella, an expanded version of it, forms the first part of the novel. So the question that runs like a scarlet thread through the novella and first part of the novel is: will they want the attack? Will Duma attack or won't Duma attack? And even more eerie is that there is a village on the border, a half-burned village, a victim of a recent border dispute, and the village is called Poltava. And Poltava is a very famous city in Ukraine, and a very famous region in Ukraine. So when I wrote this in 2020, so when it came out, Kirkus gave it a starred review, and they said, okay, this is a metaphor for Cold War. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's true. That's the inspiration. It's a metaphor for the Cold War. And then 2 years later, I understand that this is not a metaphor for a Cold War. It basically describes very well the months leading up to the actual war, to the Russo-Ukrainian war, to the invasion. And the atmosphere is so close, or was so close, that right after I got nominated, Exmo, the biggest Russian trade publisher, approached me about translation. It was 2021. Nobody thought about the war, but nobody even imagined the war would happen back then. So we thought, my agent and I thought, okay, it's all chill. We'll sell the translation rights, and then they translated. The production process, and basically the book came out in Russia, I think 1 month or 2 months before the war. And a lot of people said, I can't read this. I can't read this because, you have things happening in the book and then the same things happening outside the window. Like it's depressing enough. Mm-hmm. I don't want to read about this, So it's kind of retroactively, one could say that the inspiration was the current conflict. Only I didn't know about that back then.
But there was a movie, and I'm not sure you saw it, with Will Ferrell called Stranger Than Fiction.
I didn't see it. I
Okay.
love Will Ferrell.
Okay. Basically, there's a woman who's writing, and everything she writes ends up happening to him. And I mean, I've had things in my books that I've written and it's played out. So I think as a writer, sometimes we might plug into the collective.
Definitely. I
And
think so.
pick on
I think
stuff.
so. I think so. I think so. My agent, like when we, like the novella or the first part of the novel, it deals with the days, where people are expecting the invasion. And then I wrote the second part and I sent the manuscript to my agent. And in this manuscript, nobody attacked, And the agent said, well, I think it's good. I think it's good. But maybe like let them attack and we'll see how it happens. Like, hey, that's a great idea. Let them do it, And then like a couple of months later, or, 4 months later, so I called my agent and say, man, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we shouldn't have written that. I have another novella, which I didn't publish, which it didn't sell, which I wrote in 2017, which has magical plague happening in Vienna, and people are self-isolating, and they're also measuring the saturation, but not with oxygen, but with magic. So it's kind of a magical plague.
Mm-hmm. Which has shades of certain things that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we definitely plug into the collective.
I do. I agree. I think that is so true. And I don't think that, I mean, my first book is written from a male's point of view of hold the phone. A male who is a aging rock star, who is hooked on drugs, who is blowing up his life, who's an alcoholic and a sex addict.
Cool.
Okay. Do I know anything about most of that? No. Did I channel it? Yes. Because I remember I was sitting in a Toyota car dealership, writing this. I was sitting in Barnes & Noble writing this. And my late husband would be like, where did you come up with this? I'm like, but I've been told that the guys that have read it have like, yeah, this sounds just like a guy.
That sounds just amazing.
So I think that we plug into these things when we're writing if you are in the zone. And it's something that an acting teacher once told me, you have to live in the moment. When you're acting, you have to be in that moment. And I think as a writer, we have to feel those emotions. We have to be in that moment. You're not going to sit there and write about the possibility of war and go, oh, yeah, ha, ha, ha. No, you're going to be in the throes of it, even if you're not leaving your chair in the keyboard. You're still going to be there.
True.
So
very true.
What is going to happen after this book? What is the next move for you?
I've tried writing something more uplifting, but I'm currently writing a book. It's called The Mandolin Teacher, and it's based on my own experiences with playing classical guitar, because I started classical guitar when I was I was in my 20s already, close to my 30s. And you don't start classical guitar that late. Normally, the stories which you hear are, okay, he started playing when he was 2, and by 4 he had his first recital at, Royal Albert Hall or something, So you just don't start, that late in life. But listening to my recordings now, I realized I was quite good, But the problem was, I went first, I studied for 2 years on my own, got frustrated, and then found a teacher in Vienna. And she was a wonderful teacher, but she told me, like, okay, you have to play louder. You have to play louder because, there is audience and everybody has to hear what you're playing, also the people in the last row. So you have to play louder. The problem is she never kind of explained to me how to play louder. She never explained to me, how to, what the direction of the finger should be, to play louder and so on. So I just started, to pull on the strings harder, and that is the wrong way. And then I switched the teacher, and I started, started studying with a wonderful teacher, Kevin Gallagher in New York. But the problem is it wasn't Skype. In Skype, you have like,
mm-hmm.
the screen is quite small, so normally, you don't see both hands, you see only one hand. And we concentrate on the left hand because that's normally the hand with, where the most problems are, because, all the complex, filigrane motions are in the left hand. So he never knew that I had problems with my right hand, and I didn't know this either. But after a few years of playing, my fingers on the right hand learned completely wrong things, and I can't play anymore. Or rather, I can play, but I can't play at speed, and I can't play, the really beautiful, complex pieces that I used to play. And I wanted to relieve that, or not relieve that. I wanted to process that. So I decided to write this, the book called Mandolin Teacher, where the problem is, like, this condition is called focal dystonia, where, you know how the fingers should move, the correct movements, but as soon as you put them next to the strings, this is where, the brain starts working, by itself, and, they just bend, and do things without you having any chance to control them. So normally this condition affects people who are really successful, have been in the business like for decades, and then, at the end of their career, like, darn, I have focal dystonia. But I got it like without, being good. So I was really, really unlucky.
Well, was it unlucky or was it a blessing in disguise? Because now you're writing. So, I mean,
True.
you have to kind of look at things differently. And I understand your frustration because, yes, there was years, long time ago, I played bass. And a few years ago, I picked it up again, and it was just like, how come I can't play this stuff? I should be able to do this. No, I can't. It's frustrating because even if you start playing it again, it's still not the same. And it's like, well, where did that go?
Yeah.
That whole, huh?
Yeah, did you play with a pick or with the fingers?
Fingers. And
cool.
It's the whole, the whole theory of, oh, well, it's just like riding a bike. No, and I don't know that I really would get back up on a bike now. I haven't been on a bike in 30 years, and I might fall over. So getting on a bike now does not seem, yeah. Mm-mm, mm-mm. So I think that whole adage of, it's just like riding a bike. Sure, I would get on a bike. I'm being a little overkill, but you understand what I'm getting at. It's like things have changed. It's not going to be the same.
Yeah. Definitely. And especially with a musical instrument, you have to practice every day, or at least every week, to maintain the same level. And by the way, I did try to get on the bike like a couple of years ago, and I fell. So
see,
some of that skill does go away, but especially so with musical instruments. And in the novel, so there is, the main character. He is also afflicted by the same, although he doesn't know the name of it, and he is forced to work as a music teacher. And this is really excruciating for him because when he gets bad students, that's not really entertaining. When he gets good students and they play some of the beautiful pieces that he used to play, he sees himself in them, and he gets intense heartache, and he gets depressed because he would love to do that, but he knows that he will never able to do that, and he's really down on his luck and dire straits. No money. The mandolin, his instrument, is getting out of fashion, which kind of mirrors what happens to electric guitar, for example, right now. And his friend from the past approaches him and says, well, you know what? I have more or less solution to all your problems. You know what? The emperor is looking for a mandolin teacher for his nephew. And we will sponsor you. We will sweeten your bed, and you will get the position. You'll have all the money you want, and you'll make a difference. So what do you say? And he says, what's the catch? What do I have to do to earn that? And he said, well, not much. You just have to spy on the emperor for us. Because nobody suspects the music teacher, right? You suspect the cook who can poison your food. You suspect, the squire or, the chambermaid, but you never suspect the music teacher, the last guy you suspect of, of being a spy. And he first says no, but then, something's happened to his girlfriend, and he decides to say yes. And what he needs to spy, why he needs to spy on the emperor, is there is a railroad bridge connecting two worlds. And This bridge was closed 10 years ago. Ostensibly, the portal was destroyed, and the previous emperor died in the crash that destroyed the portal. Only it turns out the portal was never destroyed. It was always kind of ready to be turned on again, and now the imperial family is turning on the portal in secret. Ooh. And and this friend tells the main character, you know what? That they found something on the other side 10 years ago, and this was connected to the death of the previous emperor. This was connected to the fact that they closed the portal, and now they're reopening it, and we will need to know what it was, what it's on the other side that they found that prompted them first to close the portal and then to reopen it.
So you're using some of your physics training too.
Yes, very true, very true. And also in the current novel, in Sleeping Worlds Have No Memory, because there are, in the second part there are two different timelines, and in one timeline, time progresses at a slower pace. So, so it kind of also.
Then I have to ask, since we're talking about timelines and everything, what are your thoughts on the colliders? Because there's a whole thing about the Mandela Effect that things have shifted. We're on a different timeline. Do you hold any thought on that?
On the Mandela Effect?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I.
And you don't have to answer. It was just a pondering question.
I'm kind of. On the surface, it's kind of absurd, but God, we all experience Mandela effects, and a lot of people experience the same Mandela effect. For example, I'm quite sure that Australia, New Zealand was not, was a different place than it is now. It's kind of weird because, especially in experimental physics, if you can do the same, achieve the same results in experiment for enough samples, then this must be true. So if enough people say that they experience the same thing, that there must be something behind it,
Mm-hmm. Well, and then
so I believe that kind of.
Well, and then the question is, how do the people that are doing the experiments, do they know that we've switched timelines, or is it just? Because this is way out of my league of thought, but it's one of those things where you think about, they're the ones doing the experiments. Are they They should be affected by the experiment just as much as the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that nobody would ever really know what would happen.
Yeah, and that's a scary thought, and this is basically the thought which is around which this quantum suicide thing is based. Quantum suicide. So the idea is that a guy sits before a gun. And the gun has a quantum trigger. So it's absolutely random. It's really 50-50. So either the gun will fire or it won't fire. And if we are really living in the multiverse, if the multiple worlds theory is true, which is absolutely legit theory in physics. So if many worlds is true, then once the trigger goes, we have a branching, and in one branch the guy is killed, and then in the other branch the guy survives. So in the branch where he's killed, people are none the wiser. They say, okay, well, sorry, Michael, yeah, bad luck, So they don't know anything. But in the branch where he survives, he does the experiment again. And again, the worlds branch, In the branch where he is killed, people are none the wiser. They say, okay, well, first time it was okay. The second time he got killed. This is mathematics for you. But in the other branch, it's okay. Twice in a row he survived. This is something weird. The gun shoots again. Third branching. And then again in the third, in one branch where he dies, people are none the wiser. But in one branch where he has survived for the third time, people say, okay, heck, many worlds must be true, because there's no way this guy can sit before a quantum trigger. Gun with a quantum trigger and survive 3 times in a row. So the problem is that the people conducting the experiment, if many worlds theory is true, they will know that it's true only in one particular branch. In all the other branches, that they say, oh well, failed experiment.
Well, then you go back to, I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show, I'm going with the original. Even the new one was good. Quantum Leap.
Of course.
Because nobody knew what had happened, really. He changed things. And I mean, I love that show. It was a great show, even though the new one was good. But it was always intriguing because he would go fix something, but you don't really think, because then you have to look at the butterfly effect. Because if you fix that one thing, then everything else shifts.
Sure.
And I'm sure you're thrilled as a physicist that to the general public, we have, besides Quantum Leap, we have pushed the narrative of multiverse with all the superhero movies.
Definitely. I love that.
Have you seen Loki, the TV show?
Of course.
I mean, that definitely has all the multiverses all layered in there completely.
Yeah, the multiverse is getting really popular. Even the shows from which had none of the multiverses, multiverse before, now are introducing that. For example, there was a show in the 90s called Babylon 5, which is my all-time favorite, science fiction show. And they did an animated movie recently, which is basically takes place in a multiverse. And I think it also, gives a certain, freedom to the creator, be it, screenwriter or writer or director, because you can kind of go back and try different things with your creation without saying, okay, we're erasing now what we did before, So kind of going back and saying, okay, well, what would have happened if? And this is something we want to do with our own lives too. This is why this is, I think, so fascinating in fiction.
I kind of did that with my first book, because the whole book, he is living this whole really, to be fair, I mean, the book's been out since 2019, so I'm not giving anything away if I do. Well, he ends up, you start off the book, you're in 1984, but if you notice, most of the other entries are 1997. Something's wrong there. You should have a clue right there. And then we jump back to 1984. So something has gone on in this whole thing. But once again, it's kind of a reflection looking back going, you could be this person or you could be this person.
Nice.
So you have to, and there's another movie in the 90s that kind of talked multiverse a little bit, which was Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. And she lived two different lives. It wasn't a very critically acclaimed movie. It was one of those sleeper movies. But I remember seeing it once, and one life was one way and the other life was the other way. So I don't think as a public we've always been so embracing of it, but now it's like, oh yeah, bring on the multiverse. I would love to go back and change this, please. And with the evolution of technology, which this leads me to another thing to ask you about, is AI. I mean, that is changing the writing world, and it's getting very hairy because some people are creating these AI novels that aren't great, but eventually, at a certain point, they will be mastered, and then what?
Well, there are interesting problems here because, first of all, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure it will get really good at writing real fast because, first of all, when the whole thing just started, I think it was 2019, where the first chat, GPT-2, I think, model went public. I tried it immediately because I'm a big fan of Peter Watts. He's Hugo Award-winning author of Blindside, and he writes hard science fiction. He has a wonderful blog, and there he discussed someone training this GPT-2 model to produce a sequel to one of his works. And I said, okay, I need to try this out. This is interesting. And I remember it was very funny because you could reduce the number of parameters or increase the number of parameters. And if you reduce that, you got like really kind of weird, almost like gibberish things. If you increase the number of parameters, it basically began talking about Trump, Democrats versus Republicans, and so on. So just the things that it learned from the internet. So I didn't find it useful, but one thing stuck with me was that a lot of people were suggesting, reduce the size of the model because, you will get gibberish, but maybe in this gibberish there'll be some kind of random permutations which will give you some interesting ideas, and you can kind of branch off from there. What we have now, it's 5 years later. I don't necessarily think that this is like it's. Of course, it's gotten better, but I can't say that it's gotten like X times better, or 10 times better. So it's gotten better. It kind of reminds you more of a human being, and it produces more coherent text. But the kind of repetitive. I always I sometimes entertain myself, and I tell it, okay, write the text in my style, and it kind of provides very funny text, which seems like a mockery, and I give them to my wife to read. Says, yeah, this is funny. This is how you write. And no way. Come on, this is bullshit.
I like when I'm using Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid just to go through the cursory edit, and I'm using another word for that rhymes with socks, and it changes that word to sock, and it's like, no, that's a totally different word, and but it reads funny. It really does, because it's like,
it reads funny.
So it's good to at least sometimes the words that they think that they should plug in. So yeah, it's still flawed, and yes, AI, the pictures are getting better. I mean, there was actually, the news broke a little while ago that apparently former President Trump was sharing an AI video of Taylor Swift supporting him.
Oh my goodness.
And it was known as an AI, and it was an endorsement video, and apparently he shared it. And I'm like, that's trouble waiting to happen. That's just
sure,
because she's got a whole group of people that will come for him.
Very true. Very true. Very true. But I'm also a Pro Writing Aid user.
It's a good app. It's a good app. Pro Writing Aid I like better than Grammarly at times, when you want to really get detailed and down in the weeds, because you can really figure out and edit your book better. But the funny thing is, if you use both of them, Pro Writing Aid and Grammarly, they will fight with each other. You will fix something in Grammarly, and Pro Writing Aid will say it's wrong, and then you put it back in Grammarly after you use Pro Writing Aid. Yeah, they will fight. They will say they will not agree. Which to me is just kind of interesting that it's rules of grammar. It should know them. So yeah, back to the conversation. AI can be flawed.
AI can be flawed, and another problem is that the I've just at the Worldcon I was talking to an AI specialist, and they told me that the problem with training the AI further, because we don't necessarily have any kind of new approaches. We're just increasing the power. We're putting more GPUs, throwing more GPUs at the problem, more electricity, and so on. And the problem is that to train the new version of ChatGPT, like version 5, you need for a really long time, energy output comparable to an output of a single nuclear plant. And the question is where to get this kind of energy. There are certain hacks and certain ways to handle this, but apparently the electricity problem will become a progressively bigger problem in training new versions of those large language models.
The other problem for writers that is, and I don't know that you've experienced this yet. I fortunately have only experienced it once. So my husband jokingly said, "Well, you've arrived," and that's book pirating. Because there's some people that think that authors shouldn't. It doesn't matter if they get paid or not. We should pirate the book because I want to read free books. Well, there's a library to do that, but a lot of people feel that it's easy for a writer. It doesn't cost them anything to write a book. Well, sure, it doesn't cost me anything to actually write it. It's everything else that goes into it. So,
exactly.
And that's the thing with that kind of thing going on with pirating. What happens is you can send a cease and desist. Some of them will take down, some of them won't, and then they'll just close that and go on to another thing. And really, what it is they're not. It's not always about giving your book away. It's about giving their credit card information. Because some of these sites have asked for credit card information. I'm like, okay, so you may get a book for free, you may get 2 books for free, but what are you giving up?
Exactly. Oh my God! I mean, whenever the industry is just insane, isn't it? even without piracy, what you said, this idea that it doesn't cost writers anything, it kind of, even some professionals in the industry, I feel like have the same vibe, because you have what you have to fight to be even published. You have to fight very actively, like with a lot of other people, and then even if you're good at something, if you are verifiably good at something, you still have to fight for it. And then once you get it, you get like peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know. I'm not sure if you're a full-time writer.
I'm
Donna.
At this moment. I mean, do I make a living off my writing? No.
Mm.
Do I enjoy what I do? Yes. Am I traditionally published? No. But this is the thing. I went the route of, you know what? I want to write my books. I want to put my books out. I'm not going to sit here and push to get a traditional publishing contract. And part of the reason for that is I've talked to several authors on here that are traditionally published, and they're like, yeah, I'm actually hybrid. I'm hybrid now because they've told me stories about how they had a book that was written very nicely, but it was a tragic story, and they had this happy woman on the cover of the book. And they're like, that's not what I wanted. So I mean, I've made some missteps, and I released 3 books that I've since pulled because I feel that I could redo them and make them better. But last year, because I hadn't done anything in a while, I put them out. But I learned how to do my own covers. I've learned how to do things. I've also been scammed. And the thing is, what I've done since then is I've taught a writing class about those things, about the people, and I've taught at the local library. And the fact is, I had this gentleman tell me that he paid this person $1,000 to get his book published because he didn't know how to do it. And it's like, all you got to do is do this, this, and this, and then you're in control. And I'm not knocking the traditional publishers, but something you were saying is, even after you put that book out, you're still chasing. You have to be on social media all the time. And people don't look at that. They don't look at the cost of the cover. They don't look at the cost of edits. They don't look at how much time you spent writing the book. And they don't look at how much time you have to spend on marketing, because a friend who is traditionally published with Llewellyn has told me she has to market her own stuff. She still, even though they did give her some promo, she still has to be out chasing all the time.
Very true. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Nobody considers the time that sinks into it. And I'm with you that the the control which you have over the production process when you're not traditionally published is very, very, it feels very satisfying. Mm-hmm. When I and any kind of, like, I'm personally a control freak, so any kind of loss of control is I don't like it. I remember when I was writing short stories. When you write short stories, you submit them yourself, right? And I said, okay, well, my God, when I will be a novelist, I'll have my own agent, and I will, and he will submit for me, and I will just outsource this task, and I won't, have to worry about this again. I have an agent, but he's a great agent. He's an amazing agent. I'm very happy with him. He's not only an amazing agent, he's also an amazing editor. So he's like basically, half the edits on this book were from him. He's really great. But the feeling that you outsource the task and then something is happening you have no idea about, right? And then you get information maybe in two weeks, maybe in a month. That is that is insane to me. I would prefer the old mode of kind of as with the short stories. Okay, I got the rejection. I immediately know about it. And I'm off to another market, So loss of control can feel excruciating. And what you said about the cover, like a tragic story and then happy girl on the cover. Oh my God, I've heard this happen so often. And then there are other stories too, like horrible, horrifying, absolutely horrifying. Like I'm fresh, fresh from the WorldCon, and I talked to a lot of people there, and there are people are really really successful, and you talk to them and they just project confidence, and good vibes, just soak it up. But most people are they're fighting this battle or some other battle, and it's you had all kinds of stories. For example, a story that an editor acquired a trilogy. The first book went great, the second book went awesome, and then the editor just quit. And somebody else is brought on to manage the series, and this other editor is totally not enamored with it. And I don't know what this is. Just give it to me. And then the writer is absolutely terrified. They're absolutely terrified because they don't know what to do. Like, they will turn up the manuscript. It might get rejected by the new editor, and the new editor will say, we're pulling the plug on this series. And then what?
Right.
You've sold the rights to the trilogy to this publisher. So what happens with the third book? Apparently nothing. I heard different stories. Some people were able to recover the rights. Said just revert the rights back to me. I'll publish the third book myself. Some couldn't get the rights reverted. So the publisher said, we don't want to publish this, but hell, the rights stays with us. Then there are other people who got a wonderful trad pub deal, and then the first book bombed. And apparently, like in the trad publishing world, you don't get second chances. Like you bomb the first time, that's it, you're gone. And this is it's kind of despair, and tragedy. I don't know.
Well, have you heard the story? I think it was either the publisher or an agent who asked her. She was working with the author, and then it was a publishing house. She asked the author to present her notes and everything else, and she wanted to have it. She was working with her for quite a while. Well, then the person ended up taking the author's notes and everything else and giving it to another author and rewriting it.
Oh my God!
So that was a big controversy about a month and a half ago. But here's the truth. Here's something. So my second book, when I was going to release it, somebody had mentioned there was a contest by Avon Publishing. I'm like, okay. Normally I don't give out the name, but yes, I did give out the name. And the reason is, it was like, you have the only thing that is required of you is to give us a happy ever after, or a happy for now. Okay, this is going to be a total departure from what I just wrote and finished, but okay. All right, fine. So I have a month to do it. Okay, I take 3 to 4 years to write a book usually. So a month to do it. Okay. So I get it all done. I finish it up, and I'm looking at the contract. And in the contract, there's this little nugget that says, if we happen to have a book or an idea, if we publish a book with the same idea or anything similar to yours, you can't sue us. And while this was a legit publishing contract, I asked my friend who's with Llewellyn, I said, did you? She's like, no. I'm like, okay, thank you. I pulled it out, kept the book, put some other stuff in to put it into my series. That was it. Maybe I shot myself in the foot, but I've talked to some other authors that said, no, you did the right thing, because that was just a setup. And that's as authors, especially when you're trying to chase that traditional contract, you're willing to do that stuff and you're willing to give it away. But the fact is, they could have took my idea and the story, changed it up a little bit. And we have people on the internet that have done that to authors, that have taken the author's story, changed some characters, even used the same cover and just cropped it and put it up on Amazon. And how they got busted was because the fans said, wait a second, this book is verbatim somebody else's book.
Yeah. So. My God. No, but this is why I'm very happy to be with Kasich, because I had the input in the cover, I had the input in the type, I had the input in the copy, the blurb and so on. So I'm really, really enjoy working with my current publisher, because of the amount of feedback, because of the amount of back and forth, which I'm allowed to do. So that is really great. But again, stories I heard completely different stories,
Okay. So is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to add?
Well, an interesting thing about the book is the genre. So obviously the genre of the novel is the same as the genre of that Nebula-nominated novella. Again, for for people who are listening, you don't need to read the novella to read the novel. The novella is contained within the novel. But and by the way, it's out of print. the novella. So it's a great chance to get the novella and the novel. So the thing is, when the novella came out, a lot of people I didn't think about the genre at all, and when the reviews started rolling in, people started discussing it. Is it it's fantasy? No, it's not a pure fantasy. Science fiction? No, not a pure science fiction. Is it Gaslamp? Well, kind of Gaslampy, but you kind of miss the Victorian London. Is it maybe New Weird? Is it something along the lines of Chiana Mieville? Yeah, true, but again, a bit different. So nobody really pinpointed the genre. So I was in the dark too. And then one of the editors who made us an offer on the book, he texted me on Messenger at some point and said, "Hey, Yari, what's up with the noir novel?" And I'm like, God, this is a noir novel. It's noir. It's noir, but it's wrapped in science fantasy. So it's kind of the genre is science fantasy noir. And I'm sure that nobody who is listening to us right now ever wanted to read science fantasy noir, but maybe they'll want to read it afterwards.
But that's the thing. There's so many. When you write now and even play music, you can mash up so many different genres and let it go. I mean, because technically where my story is, that first book, you could kind of say it was a little bit sci-fi if you wanted to, because of the fact that it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank you so much for coming on the show. And
Donna, thank you so much. It was a great pleasure.
Get ready to root for Jen Poff, a struggling actress whose career is about as lively as a wilted flower. Her soulmate, Wes Blankenship, is a music maestro with a heart of gold. Along comes Mason Langford, a Hollywood big shot with a cutting proposal to help Jen get back on the map. But hold the phone, folks. Mason has a ginormous ego and cares more about his agenda than helping Jen. What's his hidden agenda? Jen soon realizes the sinister catch, but it's too late, and Mason springs an ultimatum on her. Can she bear to be apart from Wes for 5 long years? Get ready to be whisked away on a wild, emotional ride with this gripping story. Love is Worth Waiting For is a second-chance rock star romance with a fake relationship set in Hollywood and comes with a happy ending. Love is Worth Waiting For is available now at most online booksellers. Well, the interview, as always, kind of went all over the place, but I often say that this show is kind of like sitting down with somebody at a cafe. You never know where it's going to go. And from talking about writing, to talking about quantum physics, to talking about the multiverse, to talking about Russia and, life in Austria, to his whole journey, and then talking about AI and the future of writing and the stories that we've all heard. I think that if you're a writer, you have to pursue this with your passion in mind. And you have to keep going. You can't just, if I don't get that traditional publishing contract, I don't want to do it. Well, why do you want to be a writer? That's the question I ask yourself. Why do you want to be a writer? Is it because you love writing? Is it because it's your passion? Because something about it just makes you excited? That's one thing that I've been told time and time again by my friends. When I start talking about writing, holy crap, here she goes. She's passionate. She talks about it. And I love it. And that's something that most of us, when we find our passion, we find something that we love to do, we light up. It comes to us naturally. And I think that's important. And he, it was always a passion for Yaroslav, always. And the fact is, to have his grandmother type out those stories when he was a kid, I mean, that's an awesome thing. And to still have them. I mean, I have my writing from high school, but a lot of stuff has gotten lost in moves. And I wish I had my stuff when I was really little, because one of the first things I remember as a creative project that I had to write in 5th grade, and yes, that's not a fond memory of a grade, but one of the fun things that I got to do was she gave us a writing project on, we had to be an object. So I remember telling my mom that I wanted to write about being a McDonald's French fry. Yeah. Don't ask me why. At the time, I was a kid. I thought those were the best things in the world. And so we went to McDonald's because back then we didn't have the drive-thru, and it was a luxury meal. It wasn't something that you did all the time. So we went to McDonald's and I said, hey, can I get a carton for the large fry, which I think is now the medium? Can I get a carton for that? Because we have to do this whole project. Okay. So they gave me one that hadn't been used. And I remember writing this whole little packet of what it was like to be a McDonald's French fry, my whole journey, and taking it and cutting the paper before I started writing to look like French fries, and then cutting the construction paper and coloring. It was this whole process. And my teacher kept it. She kept it for a long time. It was one of those things that I wish I still had. Because, and I mean, thinking back, it would have got lost in a move, I'm sure, anyway. But I still remember the joy I had from not only creating story, but creating the package. And I think I think that's one of those things where we have those journeys where we discover our passion, whether it be classical and playing music or trying to create a story. A lot of our journey bleeds into our books. And, his next book that he's working on shows that, because he's giving his character the same issues he's had. And sometimes as writers, that's how we deal with things that we've gone through. There's a scene that I don't know will ever take and see the light of day, but I have one of the characters experiencing a death very much like the death that I experienced with my husband. Not the exact same setup, but I had to write that to get those emotions out. And I think as writers, that is who we are. And, it goes back to writing what you know. And as I said in the pod, do I know anything about being a drugged out rock star? No, I don't. But I do know what it's like to have people that are addicts in your life. I don't know what's going on in their mind mentally, but I know what it's like to have dealt with it and how the behavior just makes no sense in the world. But I took that and I think I channeled it, and I used that to create the characters that I needed to create. So as far as the quantum physics thing, yes, I would love if the multiverse apparently could be real, and the Mandela effect could be real. So every time they turn on that collider, are we splitting? And that's kind of what he alluded to, that the world is splitting. And I think it's fascinating. So yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you guys did too. If you want to be a guest, we are booking season 9 now. If you want to be a guest on the Better 2 podcast, drop me a line at donna@dmneedham.com or donna@better2podcast.com. I thank you as always for tuning in, and I thank Rich Zai for Third Ear Audio for the audio, and I thank Fast Susie for the music. And most importantly, I thank you guys for tuning in and listening. This is going to be one of the second to last episodes. So the next time for season 9, the background's going to be different because, well, as much as I thought my move was going to take place sooner, it's most likely going to take place between season 8 and season 9. So my backdrop, it'll be different. And season 9 should be out in January, but we'll see. There's one more episode after this one. And then, hopefully season 9 will start off in January of 2025. Oh, yeah. Anyway, guys, take care and thanks for tuning in. And guess what? I'll catch you next time. Bye.